Once again, good evening or good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dennis Archambault. I think most of you, at least the candidates, know me from emails. A few of you have met me in person. But tonight is the first time that the fellowship has done a candidates meetup with Fellows for Life. And it actually grew out of an idea that one of you had. One of you asked to take a look at a model, an application that was submitted previously. And I thought, well, gee, if they want to look at the application, why don't we give them the real thing? And so tonight we've invited some Fellows for Life. These are wonderful people who completed the fellowship in the past and are currently involved with us in various ways, directly and indirectly. We will introduce the fellows one by one to tell you a little bit about their motivation for pursuing the fellowship, the experience they had with the fellowship and part of our Authority Health family, and then where they are today and the experience, what it's done for them as professionals. And as I mentioned, they are officially Fellows for Life, which means they completed 200 hours plus of their Schweitzer Fellowship. They provided both in-person service and administrative work, and you'll learn more about that either through them or through myself as we go forward in your journey. We have a chat service. Obviously, the chat room here is available to you as you come up with a question, and then we'll go into questions following the presentation. All right, our first presenter is Malia Ahmed Hussein from the Wayne State University Public Health Program. Malia?
Hi, everyone. Nice to see everyone's faces. I know we're all getting used to this virtual setup, but I think it's great to still be involved with the program and find a way to be connected, especially for me. I'm currently in California right now, so I'm physically not near you all, but it's nice to still feel connected in that sense. So my project, so I know when you were mentioning that number of hours, Dennis, I was, getting a lot of flashbacks and memories to those days. But my project was about sexual health literacy in Muslim and Arab American women in Southeast Michigan. And Lindsey and I were part of a cohort of 4 individuals who were the first inaugural group for the Detroit chapter of this fellowship. So, it was a lot of learning, I would say, overall, and professional development that I had not received elsewhere. And I think overall, like with my particular project and, it being more of a taboo topic, but my interest in women's health in general, I think it was a really great development experience for me to apply what I was learning in my classroom in my public health graduate courses and apply it to an actual project I was passionate about. So that was my real motivation in pursuing the fellowship. I was looking for opportunities in my second year of my program that would help me just apply that knowledge and think about, program evaluation, program planning, implementation, research, all different things that we were learning in the classroom, but I thought it was quite abstract at that point. And I really loved how the Schweitzer Fellowship emphasized service and just building leaders who valued that in their work and staying connected to the community. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me to apply and get that experience while I was still in grad school. And I know, Dennis, one of the questions you were asking too is, how has the fellowship impacted us at the current stages we are in our career? And I would say, I've had to apply for jobs now in 2 different places, in DC and then here in California. And in all of my interviews, I still bring up my fellowship, and it's probably the most impressive thing that I've done. And it shows a lot of commitment to a project and commitment to the community, especially when you're involved in those administrative hours in the planning stage, but then also the implementation and also the sustainability piece, also, you know, just having that drive overall to make the world better in whatever way you can. So I think the fellowship overall, I continue to recommend it to all graduate students, especially at the MPH program at Wayne State. I really, really see so much value in it. And I think it developed me in a lot of ways that I would not have had a chance to without it.
Malia is an example of how fellows or Fellows for Life travel. When she left Detroit, she moved to Washington, D.C. and was there for a while and is now in California. Are you involved with the program in L.A.?
You connected me, Dennis, right when I moved, and I was meeting up with had a meeting planned with the program director there, but then COVID happened, so we never got a chance to meet up. And I listened into their celebration of service event, which was virtual, but unfortunately after that, I think it's kind of been hard to get connected in that sense. But it is on I would love to be involved with the LA chapter here. It's on my list to do in terms of membership. And, yeah.
Okay, our next presenter is Jaz Deep Claire. Jaz Deep came to us from the University of Michigan School of Public Health, and like all fellows, had a very interesting project. Jaz Deep?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. So yeah, like Dennis said, graduated from School of Public Health this last May. So I'm like the most recent year of fellows. And my project was developing a trauma-informed mindfulness and arts curriculum that would be teaching with incarcerated youth. And yeah, so like the main reason why I applied, I'm gonna echo a lot of what Malia said, where I was also in the MPH program. I also saw this like need to actually like apply all the skills and all the things that I was learning in class in actual real life context. And for me, I was also from the Milwaukee area. I'm from like Southeast Wisconsin, and just being in Michigan, this was like a great opportunity for me to really become embedded in the communities, actually understand everything that is going on in Detroit. Like a lot of people from out of town or out of like Michigan generally, I had this like preconceived notion of what Detroit was, what Detroit would be like, and the fellowship really shifted my perspective on that. It really gave me like a greater insight into all the work that is being done. And through the fellowship, I had the opportunity to meet a lot of those people that, you know, I look up to even to this day as like people who have done this work, who are continuing to do this work in Detroit. So that's been really beneficial from the program. So yeah, I'd say like in terms of like the long-term influence of the fellowship, again, like Malia said, it's one of the main things I talk about in every interview, anytime I like actually am talking to someone. Right now I'm applying for medical schools, and in each one of my medical school interviews, that's like the one thing that they'll pick out of my application and specifically ask me a question about that, because like Malia said, again, you actually go from coming up with the idea to fully evaluating it, implementing it, and seeing what changes you need to make, how can it be sustainable? And that opportunity to go from A to Z on a project like that is very rare, especially in like the positions that we're in as like graduate students. We usually don't get that type of opportunity, and that comes in super handy for when you're applying for whatever job it is next. It shows that you have the commitment, it shows that you have the skills, it shows that you have like the perspective and the knowledge to actually care about being in service, care about leading. So yeah, I'd say like overall the fellowship was great. And I was also in like the unique situation where I did my MPH in global health epidemiology. So like that first summer of the fellowship, I was gone. I was in Thailand and Indonesia for like that entire time. But Dennis was really gracious, and Shelly as well, and everyone else on the team to accommodate that. I zoomed in at like 3 a.m. from Thailand. I was able to like communicate with my local community partners to make sure that as soon as I got back in September, I could hit the ground running. Dennis was really great about building those connections and making sure that I had like the support to make it happen. Because like another big reason why I decided to do the Schweitzer Fellowship versus like a different service project, because like this type of work you theoretically could do on your own. You could come up with a project, you could reach out to a nonprofit and just like do it. But the thing that you're really missing is all the support that the fellowship really offers. It forces you to be really intentional about everything you're doing and make sure that you're actually going into communities and not having harm, that you're actually thinking it all through, you know, something that as a graduate student, like you might think you know it all, but like once you actually get in the ground after you have like the years of experience Dennis has had mentoring and supervising people who are doing these types of service projects in communities, he knows what the struggles are, he knows who he can connect you with, and those types of relationships are super valuable in terms of like actually doing good work, not just doing work, but doing good work. So yeah, with that, I'll end it there. And yeah, happy to answer questions later.
Great. And as Jaz Deep mentioned, he's a very good example. Some of you from the University of Michigan who are in the global health program have this required internship or remote service requirement. And Jaz Deep was actually the first of our fellows to do that, or at least to be allowed to do that. And it was a trial basis. The concern, of course, is that the cohort bonds together on a monthly basis. And Jaz Deep came to our orientation and the opening dinner program that we had, and he was kind of the life of the party, so to speak. And we knew that he was going to be a great member of the cohort, but then he left shortly thereafter. But as mentioned, he made his commitment to cross the time barrier, and it was remarkable to see him awake and contributing on a distant basis. So for those of you who are concerned that you may have that commitment, as long as you plan for it, as long as it's worked into your methods, and that you remain connected to your site mentor in the area, we can work with you. It's more challenging, certainly, but it can be done. Okay. Our next fellow for life is Sarah Charbonneau. Sarah comes to us from Wayne State University School of Social Work. Sarah?
Thanks, Dennis. It's good to see everyone. So first, I'm going to just talk about what motivated me to be in the fellowship. So as Jaz Deep said, you can have this idea and kind of run with it on your own, but you don't really realize a lot of the things that can come with that and the support that you might need. So I did have this idea of something I wanted to do. My project was meeting with groups of seniors and doing life review and reminiscence to decrease depression and social isolation. So I had this idea, and I went to a mentor of mine at Wayne State and pitched this idea to her, and then she linked me with the fellowship. So throughout the fellowship, I just want to say I did run into some conflict and some rocky roads, ran across a few boulders. I'm sure we know what that might mean by now. But I learned that I am very resilient because of the fellowship. So I've learned, what to do when I do come across conflict, or the fellowship was pretty stressful for me at some times. And there were times when I did want to really give up. So I just want to let those fellows know that if you're feeling that right now, it really pays off. So I got a lot out of this fellowship. I'm so glad I never gave up. Because it's led me to where I'm at now. So I partnered with Presbyterian Villages of Michigan for my project, and I actually work for PACE Southeast Michigan. PACE stands for Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly, and PACE is actually owned half by Presbyterian Villages, so it kind of led me to where I'm at now. So I'm a social worker in Detroit. A lot of the work I do and a lot of the experiences I have with my work as a social worker really reflects back to my fellowship. Some of the challenges that some of the seniors face that I've heard about, I see now in my work, and I'm a little bit more familiar with it. So the fellowship has been tremendously beneficial for me in the future. About a month ago, I presented my work with the fellowship to the National PACE Organization Conference. So PACE has really taken in this project that I did for the fellowship. They really want to implement it into the PACE model now for sustainability. So that's been really great. we had a plan to actually pilot it with PACE, and then COVID came, so I still presented for the conference to let other PACE organizations know about the possibilities with this project, and hopefully, we'll be able to get it going again when we can meet in person.
Sarah is an example of a real achiever. As she mentioned, she had to overcome more than a few boulders to accomplish her feat. And she was recognized by the Wayne State graduate competition, if I recall correctly. You were the second place winner, and I'm about to introduce the first place winner. Very honored to have some great people in the program. Our next speaker was the first place winner in that same competition, Lindsey Tolman. Lindsey came, I will never forget, midway into the process, she visited the office and we had a long talk about some of her ideas, and those ideas came into a very, very strong program, and she'll tell you about it now.
That's so funny, Dennis. I had no idea you were talking about me until you said my name. Sarah, congratulations on second place. That's amazing. We got top 2. That's awesome. Jaz Deep, I hope I said your name right, but I can't believe you zoomed in at 3 a.m. That's just like amazing. Kudos to you. So I'm Lindsey Tolman. I'm a doctoral candidate at the sociology department at Wayne State. The program I was in Malia's cohort, and the program I did was called LGBTQ and U, Overcoming Health Barriers Through Education and Affirmation. The reason I wanted to do this and apply was, I knew I wanted to focus on LGBTQ health when I started my program. I just didn't really know how. And the more I read, the more I realized that medical students and doctors really weren't being educated about LGBTQ health disparities. And, I was complaining about it all the time. And one of my professors finally was like, well, why don't you do something about it and stop complaining? And she introduced me to this fellowship. And I was like, okay, what an amazing amazing way, echoing like what Malia said, to take what you're learning in the classroom and applying it to the real world. And so I created this training that I gave at various, medical schools in Michigan and healthcare institutions. And it was just, an hour and a half training where I talked about LGBTQ health and introduced people to, proper usage of pronouns and just how to make LGBTQ individuals feel as safe and comfortable within the examination room as possible. I will say, because I think one of the questions was, that overlap between school and a fellowship, right? So you're in grad school or med school or, whatever advanced degree you're getting, and you're thinking about taking on more, right? It's kind of a lot. But I was really able, and I think a lot of people are able to kind of merge these two worlds very well. And so I got IRB approval and I published from this research. So I was able to, in my first or second year, I don't know how many revisions I had to do. There were quite a few, but I, was able to get a publication out of it. So even though it does seem like, an additional stressor, it is something that not only is the world benefiting from and your local community is benefiting from, but you also can get some, extra lines for your CV. And I will say also that I've done a few interviews, since the program. And again, like everyone was saying, I can't stress enough how interested people are in learning more about the Albert Schweitzer program, and how that is really something that sticks out in the CV. And I think something that I was able to learn throughout this was, I always knew I was a good student, but running a program that I kind of dreamt up wasn't really something I had the confidence that I thought I could do. And working with the other, fellows and dentists and all the great speakers that come in is really beneficial. And I will say that I've, developed a new sense of confidence when it comes to my applied work and, what I do with nonprofits. And so now I just recently got a job. I was just telling everyone before we all zoomed in, but I just recently got a position at a local nonprofit called Sage Metro Detroit. And I will be helping run their transgender health program. And so, almost every question they had for me, I had almost a direct correlation answer to what I did in the Albert Schweitzer Fellowship. And people I've ran into have maybe been a part of the Albert Schweitzer Fellowship or have known someone who's been a part of it. So it's a really great network to be a part of. So I definitely am excited to see that there's so many people interested in the Detroit chapter. Yeah, I think that covers it. I talked really fast, but I think that all covers it.
Good. And one point of interest, you were able to get some work leveraging your Schweitzer Fellowship, and then you had a contract, I believe, with Wayne State to continue your work. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I continued with giving the presentations oftentimes throughout Wayne State and doing the, my publication and stuff. And then that led to kind of just more and more little jobs that they threw my way, whether it was running focus groups or, leading other research projects. It really was kind of like a waterfall of opportunities after doing this. So I know it's definitely something very impressive, to have on your CV.
Yeah. And from a sustainability perspective, each of you has an experience in planting your project for long-term benefit. Could you each say a little something about how you feel about your work today and how whatever you might know about its sustainability? Maybe you could start, Lindsey, and then we can go backwards to those who wish to.
Yeah, so I have gotten a lot of people over the years that continue to reach out to me and ask to do trainings. And so I always do. It's something that as an advocate, as an LGBTQ advocate, I think is really important. And so it's kind of a one-woman show, and then I continue to do it. But there's also been med students who have been interested in helping continue doing the trainings. And so I'm always open for people to, help out if they want to, or to take it and do with it what they want. Yeah.
And Sarah, you mentioned that you're able to work it into the programming at pace. But as I recall, when you completed your fellowship, one of your site mentors, Phyllis Edwards at Bridging Communities, liked the project, liked the work that you've done, that you did, and adopted the project for Bridging Communities. Is that correct?
So she had social work interns that were going to fulfill the project as well. I left them with all of my materials to keep going with the project. So that was that side with Bridging Communities. And then my other side with PVM actually was to implement the groups in the apartments. But it's interesting how, I came full circle back with PVM and we were still able to do that with them. At PACE, the medical team actually really sees the benefit of different therapeutic interventions aside from just medicine. So that was pretty much the big thing is for sustainability through PACE, is to look at alternatives than to just, if someone's having, depression or they're feeling really isolated, to not jump right to medicating somebody and putting them on some medication, but instead look at other therapeutic interventions. And I'm sure we might know too that mental health professionals, it's very scarce right now and there's a huge need. So to be able to reach more people than just doing one-on-one therapy and doing things in groups has been something a lot of the professionals at PACE have really been attracted to.
Okay. Jaz Deep, how is your project doing? Did it survive the transition?
Yeah, fortunately it did. So yeah, with like my mindfulness curriculum, that's like, it's nice the same way Lindsey and Sarah were both saying, where it's like a curriculum, it's like something that you can hold and pass along if you really want to. So like I have my full curriculum, I passed that along to Youth Arts Alliance, which is the nonprofit that I was working with. Before like the pandemic hit in January, February, we had like our teaching artist training. And I actually like sat down for like a 3-hour session, just like trained them in mindfulness curriculum, gave them all the resources, access to resources. So that way, like any of our teaching artists within Youth Arts Alliance who are teaching their own programming, they can incorporate some mindfulness in it on their own. But like in the long term, the big benefit of my project has been we're actually doing programming that's specifically like mindfulness-based programming. So like from my fellowship, I actually work with the Youth Arts Alliance now. So like I'm helping like actually implement this work, but what we started off with now is we have a mindfulness curriculum that we're implementing with families. So historically, a lot of the programming we did was directly with incarcerated youth. Now it's with justice-involved youth as well as their whole family. And like that ability to combine arts with mindfulness is something that the courts absolutely love, and it's something that the families absolutely love, and being able to actually like have both of those things together in this one organization has been super beneficial in terms of us expanding beyond carceral settings and actually being in community and actually getting to know people. So yeah, in terms of like the long-term sustainability, I feel pretty good about it. Like implemented it with all the current teaching artists, gave them all the curriculum and resources that they would need to further implement this in the future, as well as working to actually get sustained funding and sustained programming with mindfulness, so Youth Arts Alliance can continue that long after I leave, hopefully, next summer.
Great, great. And Malia, I remember the challenges you had, and if I recall correctly, you formed a relationship between an organization in Chicago and Access. First, is that correct? And then did that survive?
Yeah, it was interesting to kind of navigate like an MOU for the first time, for example, and what that meant. I did, it has, in the sense that of my project, I would say that my biggest contribution was more that program evaluation piece, where I was able to show that the workshops we designed with the Chicago-based organization were effective in Michigan as well, by showing like an increase in knowledge and scores in self-efficacies 1 month after the workshop was delivered and prior. So I think that was really beneficial to showcase and show that there was value in implementing this program across different parts of the country. The workshop itself is continuing through that. I guess they're a national nonprofit, so they have different chapters now all throughout the country, and they have different trainers throughout the country. So that curriculum, again, similar to what other folks have said, continues to live on. And I think my contribution is just showing the increase in knowledge and the increase in confidence and self-efficacy to make informed decisions about reproductive health, for example. That's something that I think I'm most proud of. At Access, it has been a little bit challenging to get enough funding, I would say, to continue that work with this other organization called Heart Women and Girls. So I have been still in touch with the domestic violence prevention coordinator at Access, and I know they're continuing some of the sexual assault prevention work that we did too, like showing this documentary and having a community-based discussion around it. But I would say that was still a challenge, was navigating those lines of what was in my control, which was to kind of show the value of the program versus leadership level decisions about funding. So I think I continue to push for it too, and continue to be in touch with both of the different organizations I worked with. And 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 push for it, because it was a really important work, and a work that was much needed by the participants and their commentary after.
Good. Okay, remind everyone that if you have a question for our Fellows for Life, please forward it. I think there's one here from Ruth Bishop, or it's a statement. Thanks so much to all the fellows for being here and sharing with us. I'm wondering if you can specifically touch on the culture of the fellowship cohort. What specifically attracted me was that Albert Schweitzer Fellowship seemed very community focused and was not a program for resume building, which may be a part of it, but isn't the core focus. And I'm wondering what values and themes were discussed that reinforced the focus on serving our communities and neighbors. Anyone want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I think that was probably my favorite part. Like I was talking about, was having the monthly meetings where we would, people from leaders from the community would come and talk with us. I mean, very busy, important people would, take their time to come and speak with us. And it was always not only very educational, about leadership or evaluation or whatever, but it was also very like heartfelt. Like I just remember like oftentimes crying. I'm a crier anyways, but it was like, it was people who you can tell loved doing what they do. And I think anyone who signs up to be a fellow echoes that sentiment of just really loving and being passionate about the communities that we're serving. I also really loved my, the colleagues, like the people I met in my cohort. There was 4 of us, so it was a nice little, tight group, and we still text and talk to this day. It's very supportive. And so, I know we all kind of talked about like, oh, well, it's great on your CV and all this stuff, but it's actually like I was excited to come to this meeting. Like, I'm not excited to do any Zooms past 5 p.m., but this meeting I was excited for, so.
Yeah, I totally echo what Lindsey just said. I think, good question, Ruth. It probably did sound like we were all like, oh, you're going to become so marketable after this, but that's not at all the point of it. And I think when you go through the year, it is challenging, and there's so many hours that you put in and invest your time in this, and there's no way you would be able to do it unless you were passionate and committed to your project and committed to service in general. So like Lindsey said, I think those monthly sessions were amazing, just super inspirational. All of the leaders, were really active in their communities, and you could just continue to network with them, ask them questions after they came for the speaking event too, and just see like how they grew as leaders within their community. So it's always helpful to just have like role models and have people that just inspire you to do your work better. So I think same here. After every monthly leadership, we'd all like walk out together through the doors and be like, wow, that was amazing. I need to go do this, and this now. So it was just great to hear like all the different types of work, all the different types of leadership. And I really liked what Jaz Deep said too about being really intentional with the decision making. And that's why those administrative planning hours are so important, because we have to bring a sense of humility to this work, and being in the academic spheres, we may often feel like we know more, or we're we know the best approach, but that disconnect is there, and we have to be mindful of it, and be humble with our approach, and with who's really being brought to the table, and why you are all of a sudden able to be an expert and design this program, but just to also learn from the people who have been doing this work for years was really, really helpful. And definitely like relying on your cohort for the camaraderie, for the support system is a really big value add too. And I think it's just like working in an interdisciplinary nature as well too, like Lindsey's social work, I'm public health, Jonathan was medical, we had 2 other medical students, Jonathan as well. And so it was very, I think it was very, we all just came together for that common goal, even though we were from different fields technically. But yeah, it was great to just be connected in that sense.
Anyone else?
Yeah. So in terms of like the community, I think it helps that we're all going through this thing together, you know, like no one understands your disappointment from like something going poorly in your project and another fellow who experienced that same thing like a month ago. And the fact that we are so interdisciplinary really helps as well, because it's someone that has expertise in this specific topic, you can learn from each other. Like not everyone has all these areas of expertise, and it's really an opportunity for you to become like experts in multiple different fields. You learn from each other's experiences and whatnot. So I think that's like the real, you know, crucible that really forms that bond, is the fact that we're all trying to do this fellowship. We're all really working hard to make like the most impactful thing happen. And in terms of like what was actually discussed and reinforced in terms of the actual like meetings and whatnot, and Dennis, you can comment on whether this has been like a historic thing or if this was something that was new for our fellowship year. But we were super intentional in our conversations, and these like conversations went beyond our actual meetings, talking about the colonial history of philanthropy, how philanthropy can be used as this form of imperialism, neo-imperialism, how we can be intentional in making sure we're not doing the same thing, right? So like those conversations started in our fellowship meetings, but went long after, right? Like those are conversations that we're still having today about how we can be intentional in the work that we're continuing to do. Thanks for the snaps. So yeah, I'd say like those different factors are like what really formed the bond in our relationship. We were all learning from each other. We all had our own expertise. We were all doing different projects. We could all empathize with each other's joys as well as dismays. So yeah, I think that really forms the bond.
What Jaz Deep is referring to is this is not intended to be a didactic program by any means, but we have actually in I think his year might have been the first time I did it, but we had 2 readings in humanitarianism for the 21st century. We wanted to this fellowship is very micro. It's you and your world, but you're also practicing the art of humanitarian work, and it helps to get a sense of the bigger picture and what that bigger picture may mean politically and so on. So I'm glad there was value in that, because we do try to get conversation going along heady issues. Okay. Question here. Oh, let's see. Let me get up here. Okay, from Jody Elizabeth Davis. Can the fellows specifically talk about how they cultivated relationships with their community partners, especially the people who did not grow up in the communities they served? Who wants to tackle that one?
Hi, I'll go for this one. So I'm not originally from the Detroit area. I am from Michigan, but I am from mid-Michigan, so I'm from Bay City. When I first started the fellowship, I didn't even really know where to start with community partners, and it was really helpful that my mentor did point me in the right direction. And as I said before, I have ended up working with one of the community partners as in my professional life now. But I think the most important part is to make sure to go back after you're all finished with the fellowship and really present, you know, what you did, those results, and really let them know what impact it had on that organization, and really trying to stay in touch with those people as well. It might sound like a little overwhelming, and because, you know, you're finally finished and you're dealing with people who, you know, might be very busy, but taking that time is still really important to keep that relationship going.
Anyone else? Okay. This question from Sumi Day.
Dennis, can I comment on that?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, cool. So, and I think Lindsey might have wanted to too, but I'll keep mine short because I know we're running low on time. But Yeah, I'm from Milwaukee, so like being in Detroit was like brand new to me, and I think this is where having a good faculty mentor, or right, that's what we call them, faculty mentor, like the person who's like in the school, comes in super handy because if you're new to the area, you might not have these long-term relationships, but your faculty mentor hopefully does, and they can connect you with these different nonprofits and different organizations. And another thing I definitely recommend, especially if you're from out of town, is sooner the better. So like contact Dennis, contact whatever faculty mentors you might be interested in, and start having these conversations early. So for me, before like the fellowship applications due February-ish, right, Dennis?
Yes.
And I was talking to like my faculty person and like my site supervisor in like November, October. So I made sure like I had, but like, you know, I was gone that summer. So I made sure I did everything early generally. But I think that's one of those things, like the sooner you can start developing that relationship, the sooner you can show like what skills you're going to bring to this organization, the better it is for you when you actually like, hit the ground running.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, you know, throughout the program, you know, just be transparent. I think, you know, Sarah, you were kind of already talking about this, but transparency is so important. Like if you're struggling with something, you have a hurdle or a boulder, you know, talk to your site mentor and your academic mentor about it, because they have networks, and Dennis, you know, they have networks that you can access to help you. You know, even though you're independently doing this, there's a whole group of people that want to support you. So I think that helped me cultivate my relationship with both of my mentors.
Yeah, and I know it's different now in COVID time as well too, but emails are difficult sometimes, especially if it's a first introduction, and you may want to just set up meetings, virtual meetings now if that's the case. But I felt like when I met more with people in person and actually like scheduled time with them and got on their calendar, that was more successful than me just continuing to email like my idea or just what the thoughts were. And I think again, coming in with that approach of humility is really important too, and understanding that, you know, whoever you're reaching out to for those partnerships, they know their community and their population the best too, and offering your services to help. Yeah.
Okay. And this is from Sumi Day. Unfortunately, all of the fellows are completed but Jaz Deep may qualify for this. Sumi would like to hear about what it was like to communicate with the community in the COVID era. Toward the end of your fellowship, you had to.
Yeah, I guess just like initial thoughts on how you communicate in the COVID era is like it definitely just takes more time and takes more effort and like maintained contact. But I think it's one of those things that we're all trying to figure out how to navigate this. So it's just like making sure that we have wraparound services. So a lot of the families that we're working with, like, I guess a part of this question too for me is like, what do you mean by the community? If you mean like the direct people who are working with in the community, like in Ypsi and Southeast Michigan, a lot of that for us is like maintaining constant contact, having their phone numbers, having their contact information, knowing the best way to contact them, and just putting in the legwork to make sure they know all the information that they need to actually like come to our events. In terms of like organizationally, again, I think that's like another thing that we're all switching over to, being more comfortable remote, being more comfortable with email and Zoom. So it's just like more contact, a little bit more effort, but I definitely think it's like manageable, especially now that we are at the later end. Like we've had this since March, so a lot of people have already adjusted to this new climate and are able to communicate in it.
Yep, indeed. It was, I remember that last month, it was really, really stressful, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. This question from Catherine Elizabeth Guardano, hopefully I got that right. I have to practice that name a bit. Thank you for talking to us about your experiences with the fellowship. Would you talk about how you managed your time during the fellowship? The time you spent working in the community in person, did you plan for a certain amount of hours per week, or when there was an opportunity for you to implement your intervention? And hopefully that came out right, but anybody want to? Time Management 101.
Just make sure you set aside time for self-care also. I think I kind of learned as I went, I definitely structured time that I was like, oh, I'm going to set aside this for doing admin and this for, designing this survey. But I think the fun thing about applied work is that things can pop up, things can be delayed, things, that you didn't expect to happen. And you just got to be resilient and roll with the punches. And so I want to stress, planning is great, but what's that quote? Like, planning, life happens when you're planning. I don't know. But anyways, just set aside time for getting as much as you can done on top of your schoolwork, but also setting aside time for yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, none of this work can happen. And, that's like the most revolutionary act we can do is take care of ourselves while we're taking care of others. So.
Yeah,
Very,
good point.
very important. Yep, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, initially I did the same where I was planning X amount of hours per week and like mapped out, my year in that sense. But things come up, things change, and that's okay. And as long as you're transparent and you talk to Dennis and other people about it, there's a way to still, I guess, meet those hours requirements and get creative about it too. But just like with anything in life, time management is hard, but it's a necessary skill to start developing and get really great at. And it's a good opportunity for you to do that while you're managing school and fellowship and all of your other extracurricular activities. You learn just how to prioritize based off of timing, deadlines, other external factors. So I think it's not going to lie, it's a lot of work, but it's all worth it in the end, as you've been hearing from everyone who's gone through the program.
And just add something quick to that, where it's whenever you're talking to your nonprofit that you want to work with, you can have a conversation about like what type of time commitment they'd like or they prefer, what works for them, and find a nonprofit that matches your style. So for me, I love structure. I like structure right on the onset. I would like to know, like, I'm going to be doing a workshop. Like I taught workshops, I would be doing a workshop every Monday for these 12 weeks, have that set in stone, and I knew that. If that's like your style, you can definitely like work with the nonprofit in advance and make sure it's set up that way for you. Or if it's like you have more flexibility and you'd like to do it more freestyle, just make sure like whatever nonprofit you're working with is okay with that. They can accommodate whatever style that is, and then just go with it that way.
There are a couple thank yous. Jody Davis, Ruth Bishop, Steve Henry, and Dixie Raj Kumar. Thank you. And this question from Debbie Gurma. Hi, everyone. Thank you for sharing your experiences. I'm curious about how you work through bumps in the road you may have encountered, and how did you account for progress within your respective projects as it was unfolding? The progress reports.
So I'll get stab at this one. So as I said before, I did encounter some bumps in the road. I think the biggest thing is I did lean on my mentors a lot of the times. If I was unsure, I would always speak with them, going back to transparency. I also would get a lot out of the cohort meetings as well, saying what I was going through, and letting the other fellows, if they might be feeling the same thing, you're not alone. So I really think leaning on those supports when you do experience those bumps. The progress supports too, I think it's really beneficial to do that reflection, because sometimes we might see a lot of negativity just in our day-to-day, what we're doing, but sitting back and really looking at what we're doing and seeing that there is progress and doing that reflection is really important to see that. So it's really beneficial. Always reflect.
For those of you who are new to the Schweitzer experience, the reflection is a very important part of the program. It's designed to allow you personal time for introspection and to take an assessment of where you are and how the population that you're working with is responding to your work. And I'm glad Glad Sarah brought that up. Anyone else have any added comments on that one? Okay, it looks like we're at the end of the questions. Another thank you from Sumi Day, and I thank you all for coming out and sharing your experiences. It's good to see you again, and it's good for you to be connected with hopefully some future Schweitzer Fellows and building the community of Southeast Michigan.